They grounded me without warning. One day I was landing a 737 in a crosswind so strong the tower went silent. The next, I was called into an office with too much glass and not enough soul. "We're phasing out legacy captains," said the man with the tailored tie and no wings on his chest. "The Axiom guidance suite is fully certified now. Autopilot from gate to gate. No need for manual override anymore." They smiled when they said it, like they were giving me a gift. "You'll keep your benefits. Your license stays active. For now. You've earned a rest, Captain. My name is Walter Briggs, 37 years in the air, 2 million nautical miles logged. I have flown through Category 3 hurricanes, frozen pitot tubes mid-flight, lightning strikes, and full systems blackouts. My hands knew turbulence before the instruments did, and suddenly I was just a liability. "You're analog, Walt," my first officer once joked. They want pilots who tap, not feel. They gave my route, Seattle to Chicago, to a younger pilot with fewer hours and a fully integrated Axiom system. He showed off the tablet in the break room like it was a toy. "Auto flares clean, doesn't even need my hands on final approach." I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked out. That night, I opened the flight bag I hadn't unpacked in years. Inside were logbooks, maps, an old pair of weathered gloves, and a picture of my wife from our first Christmas in Miami. She passed 5 years ago, but her voice still sat in the back of my mind like a co-pilot. "Don't let them take the sky from you, Walt," she once said. "Not while you still feel it in your bones." I didn't sleep that night or the next. 2 weeks later, I started hearing things. Small, whispered rumors. A flight into Denver aborted on approach. Unexpected glide path deviation, the report said. A short hop over the Gulf nearly overshot the runway. Minor guidance recalibration required. No fatalities. No headlines. But something in the system wasn't right. And then I got the call, from Harris, former chief flight instructor. Retired 3 years before me. He didn't believe in tech he couldn't open with a screwdriver. "You still check METARs before your coffee, Walt?" "Every morning," I said. "Then you might want to look at Flight 806. Out of Dallas. They lost telemetry on descent. Auto guidance took them 30 miles off course before someone realized no one was hand-flying. What happened?" "They grounded the crew, but it wasn't their fault." "No," he said. "It was Axiom's. But you can't court investors by grounding a billion-dollar system." I stared out the window. There was a storm rolling in. I could feel it, not see it. The kind of pressure change that settles behind your eyes before it hits the radar. "They're gonna call you," Harris said quietly. "And when they do, make sure your hands are steady. Because it won't be in time. It'll be just after." 3 weeks passed before anyone called me, but I was already watching. Flight 119 skidded on rollout in a dry Las Vegas crosswind. "Sensor desync," they said. Flight 220 had to divert after the Axiom suite failed to recalculate fuel drift during a reroute over Ohio. Weather model misread, they called it. But every old pilot I still talked to, quiet voices on back channels, long out of uniform, saw it for what it was, a system too confident, too rigid, and too blind to know when it needed a human hand. The headlines still praised it. Record efficiency, 98% automated. Flawless final approaches. No one prints the seconds where lives go quiet. Only the numbers that look good in quarterly earnings. The call came late on a Sunday. "Captain Briggs," the voice said, crisp, nervous. "This is control operations at Skywell Air. We've had a situation. You're being asked to report to Terminal 3, Hangar D." Why? Flight 603 out of Seattle. Axiom suite failed mid-descent. Both pilots attempted manual reversion. System locked them out. "Locked them out?" I repeated. "They couldn't override. They lost vertical guidance." "Did they crash?" "No. The first officer managed to force a mechanical cutout and drop to visual. Barely. My hands tightened on the phone. "And you want me there? Why?" There was a pause. Then the voice softened. "The next flight's already boarding. Same route, same aircraft series. We need someone in the jump seat who can make the decision if it fails again. So now you want instincts? We want a second brain." I didn't pack a bag. I just grabbed my jacket. When I got to the tarmac, the captain assigned to the flight, young, clean, 3,000 hours, looked like someone who'd never landed without a simulator first. "You're Briggs?" he said, trying to sound respectful. "Yeah. They said I might have to defer to you." "You will," I told him. "If the system goes quiet." The aircraft was a CSX 8000 series. Smooth, powerful, too smart for its own good. Everything routed through Axiom now. Flight control, engine modulation, predictive vectors. I sat in the jump seat and listened, not to the plane, to the air. I could feel the shift at 28,000 feet, something off in the trim response. Subtle, like a cough someone hides during a speech. "Watch your bank," I murmured. The captain glanced down. "We're on course." "No, you're fighting a drift. Look at your N1 variance." He stared. Then his face changed. Autopilot was compensating too hard. A back-end software patch had overcorrected torque, barely noticeable, until it wasn't. Then the alert came. Guidance path lost, red, frozen, no, override accepted. "Manual control," he barked. "Nothing. Shut the suite," I said. "Cut hardline. Bypass with mechanical failsafe." I've never done that. I have. I reached over, found the old kill relay they never bothered to remove, flipped it, silence, then hum, then full control. He flew it in, hands shaking, breath uneven. We touched down at SeaTac at 5:42 p.m. Perfect flare. Manual. Nobody clapped. But nobody screamed either. I stepped off that plane with one thought. They didn't need a second brain. They needed the first one they threw away. They didn't thank me. No debrief, no handshake, no nod of respect from the young captain I helped land. Just a tight-lipped "you'll be contacted" from the ground coordinator and a security escort back to the crew lounge, like I was carrying something contagious. The next day, I got the email. Per our conversation, your reactivation was an isolated operational measure. You are not cleared to resume active duty. Isolated. I just manually saved 146 people from a cascading system failure, and they were already moving to erase it. I wasn't surprised. Systems like Axiom can't afford memory. They run on the illusion of perfection. And people like me, we break that illusion. But the thing about flying is, you never forget how. And the thing about me, I wasn't finished. 3 hours later, I got a text from Harris. "You're not the only one." Attached, a flight log from Toronto. Another Axiom suite. Same failure. This one ended with a scraped wing and a full evacuation. Pilot error in the official report, but I saw the log. There was no input error. The system had frozen again. I sent a message to a private network, one the old pilots kept alive, long after management tried to shut it down. Within hours, I had 6 incidents, 4 close calls, 1 fatal. None of them were reported accurately. Axiom was failing under conditions it couldn't predict. Magnetic drift, vertical shear, engine cross-cycling, emergency vector reroutes. Not because it couldn't calculate, because it couldn't feel. And that's where we came in. We were supposed to be relics, but we were the only ones who remembered how to fly when the computers blinked. I compiled the logs, cross-referenced them with aircraft IDs and tail numbers, built a file. Then I added my name to it. Not anonymously. Just Walter Briggs. Retired captain. Human pilot. I sent it to the FAA, and then I waited. It took a week. Someone knocked on my door at 6:15 a.m. I opened it, expecting a letter or a warning. Instead, it was the young captain from that flight. Ben, still in uniform, eyes hollow. "I had a check ride yesterday," he said. "They grilled me for 4 hours about the Axiom bypass. Tried to make me say I panicked. That you forced me." "Did you?" He looked down. "No," he said quietly. "You saved us." I nodded. "So why are you here?" "Because if I say what really happened, I lose my job." "No," I said. "You lose the silence." He took a breath, then pulled something from his bag, a flight recording, external and cockpit. They scrubbed this from the report. I kept a copy. I held it in my hands. That little black box. "Why now?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because the system we're flying with is broken." "But the one protecting it?" "That's the part that's dangerous." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about flying anymore. It was about who still had the guts to take the controls back. We didn't release the black box audio right away. Ben was scared. Rightfully so. He had a mortgage, a toddler, and no backup plan if Skywell clipped his wings. "They'll come after me," he said. "They will," I told him, "but not just you. Me too. And every other pilot who still believes we're more than passengers in our own cockpit." So we planned. Renee, a former union representative who once sued an airline and won, connected us with a journalist who understood aviation, not just headlines. She listened to the audio. "Watch the footage, Then she said, "This isn't a story about automation." "No," I said. "It's a story about what happens when leadership stops listening to the people who keep the wheels on the runway." The article dropped 2 weeks later. Inside the Axiom failure they tried to ground. Audio clips, data logs, matching incident reports scrubbed from internal databases. Anonymous pilot testimonials. Expert analysis of system breakdowns masked as user error.it spread fast. At first, Skywell called it, quote, "an attempt to discredit innovation." By day 2, regulators were asking questions. By day 4, we weren't alone anymore. A former first officer from Munich came forward. A Canadian captain submitted his own scrubbed report. A mechanic leaked internal maintenance memos that showed known Axiom sensor desync issues dating back 18 months. The FAA opened a review. The NTSB requested cockpit footage. Skywell went into lockdown. And me? I got a letter from their legal team. Cease dissemination of proprietary materials. I pinned it to the corkboard above my stove and brewed another pot of coffee. Ben was quieter now. Not out of fear, out of focus. He was testifying remotely to regulators, under oath. He called me after. "They asked what you did." "What'd you say?" "That you taught me to land without looking at the screens." A pause. I didn't realize how much we'd lost until they were gone. And that's what no one understood. The Axiom suite didn't just fail because of code, it failed because it was built to ignore people like Ben, people like me. I got a call that night from Harris. He was laughing. They're rerouting flights, pulling the CSX 8000s from rotation. Quietly, of course. Maintenance reviews. But they're moving fast. They scared? They're bleeding. The last thing he said stuck with me. "You didn't just land that flight, Walt. You forced them to remember who was supposed to be flying." I sat alone that night listening to archived radio chatter from my first year in the air. Back then, it was just voices and instincts. No overlays. No auto-throttle. No one saying, "Trust the system." Back then, trust had to be earned between pilots, between tower and crew, between you and the sky. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the sky was listening again. 3 weeks later, Skywell's board stood in front of the cameras. They didn't say we were wrong. They said we're reevaluating our automated flight systems. They didn't say Walter Briggs was right. They said, we thank all former personnel who contributed to the ongoing dialogue. And yet, they grounded the Axiom suite indefinitely. FAA officials issued a directive. No aircraft may fly with uninterruptible automation. Manual overrides had to be accessible and tested. Pilot training hours were being reinstated, not in simulators. In cockpits, with real wind, real weight, real responsibility. I wasn't reinstated, but I didn't want to be. Ben was. He's training new hires now, starting them with paper maps and backup headsets, just like we used to. Redundancy isn't just a rule, he told them. It's respect for the machine, the crew, and the people you carry. I still fly. Private charters now, small planes, unpressurized cabins. No flight directors, just me, the stick, and the sky. But every now and then, I get a message. Quiet. Personal.1 from a pilot who read the article. One from a flight attendant who used to think automation would make her job easier until she saw what happens when no one's left to listen. And one from a mother. Her son was on flight 603. She didn't say much, just, I know you're the reason I still get to tuck him in. Thank you. That note sits on my dashboard. Not for pride, for clarity. Because this was never about old pilots versus new ones. It wasn't about fear of change. It was about the danger of forgetting why we started flying in the first place. You can program a system to respond, but you can't teach it to care. You can feed it all the data in the world, but it won't know when the wind is lying to you, or when the engine's hum sounds a shade too thin, or when a young captain's voice starts to crack and you know it's time to put your hand on the yoke, not the touchscreen. The suits will move on, new tech will come, but as long as planes take off, someone's going to need to know how to land, with heart, with hands, with eyes that don't blink when the lights go red. And if they forget that again, well, I'll still be listening.